right. G'day, Ed. How are you, mate? Happy Friday for you. Happy Saturday morning for me. How are you, mate?
Hey, buddy. Living the dream. How you doing over there? You awake yet?
Yeah, I'm good. That microphone sounds really good when it's right up close to you there.
Yeah, well, I got to do something.
Hey, we got a great show coming up today. There's a bit of a rant coming from the United States of America for some reason. Is everything okay there, or you just kind of got a bee in your bonnet and just want to get it off your chest?
No and yes.
Because you've warned me a couple of times. You warned me in a message before we got live, and when I got here, you were warning me as well. I'm like, what the hell?
I'm not my usual Minnesota nice today.
You're not chilled today. It's all coming out, and you're getting cranky.
I think, boy, I better let out some steam. I need some kind of outlet. Otherwise, boy, I'm gonna blow. I'm gonna, it's not good for my health. Keeping this stuff bottled in. So this is therapy for me today. Just I'm gonna forewarn the audience out there. Those of you guys who are watching, you're gonna see a little more colorful side of Ed Anderson today. So don't say I didn't warn you.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. There's been a couple of developments overnight as well, which I want to share with the audience. So why don't we kick off to today's show, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Rob Russ, and my co-host Ed Anderson's joining us from Minnesota in the United States. We're live here every day on YouTube and the associated platforms, on Twitter as well, on Facebook too. A couple of YouTube channels, and this is the Unspoken Truth. If this is your first time here, welcome. It's great to have you here, and thank you for tuning in and having a little sticky beak at what we do over here. Ed and I have a look at the mainstream media and the news that's out there, and we like to pull back the curtain and show people the unspoken truth of what's really going on and what are they trying to do. And we've got a classic conspiracy unspoken truth type story today. And conspiracy theories are now known as spoiler alerts because they all seem to pass. There was an interview with Elon Musk the other day, and the guy asked him, you're out there tweeting about conspiracy theories and saying all of this. And Elon kind of thought about it for a second, and I think in his mind he thought, you fuckwit. Then he leaned in and he goes, well, they turned out to be true, didn't they?
I saw that interview too, and it was funny. When Faber asked one of his questions, I thought about it for like 15 seconds.
Yeah, there was like a massive pause there, wasn't there? It was tension.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he was trying to think. I'm sure he was thinking, "What the f, man? Or what?"
I literally don't care about
that's such a stupid question. How can I insult you in the best possible diplomatic way? And then before you answer, that's probably what he was thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. We love to talk about those types of stories, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what you're going to see on this show if you've never been here before. Today we're going to be talking about the globalists and how they've won. This is the classic unspoken truth story that I'm talking about here, and you're going to see behind the curtain of our thinking, and we're going to give you a different spin on the narrative. And I was listening to somebody the other day. I was listening to Tim Pool the other day, and he was saying part of the discourse that we all see in Western society at the moment is completely related to people just not having the time to consume the information. We're so swamped with information. We're drowning in information. And if you just turn on your Twitter feed or turn on the news on TV just for 5 minutes, you're kind of glancing at it and you're sort of listening to it in the background, not really paying attention. Maybe I'm looking at Twitter while I'm watching TV or Netflix or something like that. And I see it and I go, oh, well, that must be true. If somebody's taken the time to write it and they've created a news report, an article about that, it must be true. But the reality is the vast majority of the media that you see out there is actually perpetuating a narrative that's designed to get you to think a certain way. And most of that narrative is designed to scare you because fear is the most powerful way to control people. And when you're scared, they'll get you to comply with what it is that they want you to comply with. I logged into my favorite news site earlier this morning when I just got started for the day, and on ground news, and the headline is 1 billion people, sorry, I got to get my millions and billions right, 1 billion people at risk of cholera. A cholera pandemic. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Cholera has existed for as long as humans have existed, and the third world has existed for as long as humanity has existed as well. There is no increased elevated risk of a cholera outbreak. What a load of garbage. But on the screen, the screen real estate that you see, this is taking 2/3 of that real estate. And it's designed to polarize you, to scare you to go, oh my God, there's another pandemic. And then you scroll on a little bit further and bird flu's taking over in the UK and 2 people have been infected and children are going to die and it's designed to scare you into compliance. But remember to rage against the machine. Remember that band in the 1990s, Rage Against the Machine? Yeah, and what you've got to do is just don't do what they tell you. Ignore everything they tell you. Ignore everything the government tells you. Ignore everything that a health professional tells you. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they've been found out to be liars. And they're fools. Just because you've got a degree and you're smart, it doesn't mean you've got common sense. I was saying on yesterday's show, there was a prominent television doctor here in Sydney that went and got her jabbies, and she got her first one, and then her partner went and got her first one, and then got her second one, and got really sick. And then the television doctor went, it must be an anomaly. She went and got her second one and got really sick too. And it's like, you wouldn't go any further after you see your partner really, really sick as a result of what happened. But you go, it'll be all right, it's just an anomaly. It just shows me that it doesn't matter how many degrees you got or how smart you are academically, you can't have 1 ounce of common sense in your head. And these people just drive me absolutely crazy. All right, that's my small rant about the unspoken truth, but we're going to get some more of that today. We're going to be talking about F-16s for Ukraine and why that actually matters. That's squarely in my wheelhouse. I love that stuff. And I'll tell you why that is such a big thing. And I'm going to share some numbers with you that are actually quite gobsmacking. If you've never heard these before, you'll be like, what? Really? Are you serious? Is that what this costs? And you'll just be wondering what this is all for. And when I share those numbers with you and I give you the unspoken truth about those things, you'll see why the military-industrial complex is what it is. And you'll get a better understanding of what this conflict actually means. And when you look behind the conflict and you say, well, who stands to gain the most from these things? In a couple of numbers, in just a few short moments, I'll help you to understand that, and you'll just be gobsmacked. And I promise you, once you see and hear these things, you'll never be able to unsee or unhear these things again. And it will change your perspective of this war and everything that's going on in and around that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for joining us. As I said, make sure you come on over and follow us on Spotify. We're live 5 days a week, Monday to Friday in the US, Tuesday to Saturday here in Australia. And once the show is finished, I'll pull the file down and upload it into Spotify so you can get the audio version over there on your favorite podcasting app. We're over on Apple Podcasts as well. And wherever you get your podcasts, you'll be able to get a little bit of unspoken truth in your ears. We're also over on Telegram, and I encourage you to come on over and follow us there. Just scroll down, and the links are right there in the description, because I share a whole lot of R-rated content that cannot be shown over in this particular platform, and some in Facebook as well. Because Facebook's a bit of a censorship Nazi over there as well, and it's really a bit shit that we keep getting pinged for all of these copyrights and all these sorts of things. So over in Spotify and the podcast version of it in Apple, you'll be able to get the full version of it, because if it gets clipped a little bit here in YouTube for whatever reason, there's no need to be clipped over there in Spotify or Apple. So it's quite good from that perspective. Ed, what have you got for us today, mate? You're going to kick off with an Ed. Here's the real Edism coming out. Here's the unspoken truth of how he really feels about it. What do you got for us, mate?
Well, first of all, just for the record, I have never been pinged or censored on Twitter.
Well, you have to be on Twitter to be pinged or censored on Twitter. Let's get you on there. Come on, man. That's got to be your job for the weekend. Come on. There's so many things I want to share with you.
Well, the year is still young, so I get that.
I got a 3-month window from the moment I asked to the moment where they're all right. We're there.
All right. So I hope everyone bears with me here. So I just have something that I wanted to get off my chest. I just had to do it, and rather than just doing it with Rob privately, I thought I'd share the pain with all of you guys as well. So
before you hit that play button, I just want to say something about that, Ed, because in this modern politically correct crazy world that we live in, I think men like you and I don't really have an outlet. You and I have an outlet. We've got a microphone, we've got a camera, we've got a YouTube channel. So we have the ability to get this stuff off our chest and to do that. So if you're watching this live or you're watching a replay of this, I encourage you to find an outlet for yourself, because if you've got something that's inside of you that's really kind of grinding your gears and it's upsetting you, you need an outlet for those things, because I promise you'll feel a whole lot better when you use that outlet and you get those things off your chest. I genuinely feel better after doing these shows with you in the morning, Ed, because it's the start of my day, and I feel like I've expressed myself and the artistic release, you know, about my opinions and my thoughts and all of that. I think that's such an important thing, and guys just don't do that, particularly men in later life, in the middle part of their life, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. They don't have that outlet to do it, and sometimes they go talking to their friends about these things, and you like Grandpa Simpson screaming at the clouds, and everyone thinks that you're crazy. But you're not crazy. You've just got to find a community of people like you, and hopefully this community can be for you as well.
Yeah, and you'll live longer, and so will your pets. So you won't,
That's
won't
what
be
matters, man.
Won't be kicking them around so much. Okay, all right. So,
all right, well, go ahead and show us what you got.
All right. I hope you'll forgive me if today is a little bit of a rant. I have to get this off my chest. If for no other reasons, for my own mental health, I just got to get this out. So I'm calling it. The globalists have won, and our lives are never going to be the same. So let's talk about this. Okay, so it will not be any surprise to you out there, especially if you're an American, but even if you're anywhere in the world, that the borders of America are pretty much non-existent right now. We have an open border, and floods of humanity have been coming through. And make no mistake, this is by design. The globalists have been working on this for an awful long time. They're organized, and they are making it happen. Now, it's true that these marching orders come from an elite class of people, mostly out of the United Nations and the WEF. But just because someone is a globalist does not mean that they are not in the United States. We have many globalists right inside of our own government. Our administration is packed full of globalists. They do not like the values that America stands for. They hate America. Globalists want a one world system, and they despise the idea that one country can be so prosperous and so free. So they're determined to take us down a notch. And part of the process involves flooding America with masses of humanity from countries that have failed. They're failed countries. Now, it's true that the vast majority of the people coming over our borders are from Central and South America. And every single country in that part of the world is a socialist country. It's just a matter of degree. They're all socialists. And no matter how bad their world get, they keep electing socialists. The world, pretty much all of they're fleeing misery. And it's really kind of funny. These socialist cities now that are starting to have people bust to them are amazed and surprised at what this is doing to their community. Let's take a look at a few reports.
So now the anchor in is to the maximum capacity at $300,000 a month. So you took these hotel owners. Now remember, the hotel owners sign up for this. They put themselves in like, we want to do this.
Of course, they want to make money.
So now they went from $0 to $300,000 a month to do by day. Remember, they cannot hold jobs. If they get a job, a small business owner offers them a job and somebody rats out the small business owner, that's a $10,000 fine. $10,000. Who's going to take that chance? With small business on the brink of dying, you're going to hire somebody at the risk of somebody ratting you out? No, families.
Councilman, I got to ask, though, you talked about the money. The Bloomberg reports this is costing New York City $8 million a day. As part of the city council, why would you guys not just completely do away with the right to shelter?
But the big thing here is everybody, I think it's time for the mayor to re-examine the sanctuary city status. Because, or turn the buses around. This is not a temporary situation we're in. This is permanent.
Okay, so news alert. When you have a flood of humanity who show up in your doorstep and you have to provide for them, it costs money. And your neighborhoods are never going to be the same. Your children can't go to parks anymore because the parks are, encampments of homeless people. And the reason why I say that they've won is that these people are not going anywhere. I mean, once they're here, you're not going to get them out. And our own government is facilitating this. You got tuberculosis or scabies, and you're going to have a hard time making it to America? No problem. We'll send down some beautiful, modern, air-conditioned buses to bring you on up. And if you're coughing and hacking your disease all over everyone else in the bus and anyone within, 20 feet of you, it's okay. No worries. We'll figure that out later. Just come on in. You don't have any money in your pocket? No problem. The United Nations have a nice little debit card loaded with dough on it for you to cover your expenses. And what's the big deal? You want to take your children to a local park, but you can't because it is an encampment for homeless people? Hey, that's your problem. Listen, you leftist cities, Chicago, Denver, New York, LA, Seattle. How's that socialism working out for you? You know what, everyone? I think it's a really good idea if we make our city a sanctuary city. So once somebody gets to our city from some foreign country, they're here for good and they're on the dole. You want free healthcare? Here you go. You want a nice education for your kids? Here you go. Forget the fact that now teachers have to, instead of teaching their usual class, they have to spend all their time teaching the new kids English so that the standardized testing scores for everyone else in the school go down and suffer. And that's just all part of being part of the global community, right? And you're a veteran who served your country and you're falling on hard times. Well, I'm sorry, we got to put you out of the hotel we're putting you up in to make room for the people coming in from other countries. Let's take a look at this report.
This week, Newsweek reported New York hotels are evicting homeless veterans to house migrants in their place.
This weekend, more than 24 United States military veterans were kicked to the curb by hotels in suburban New York City after a busload of 60 migrants were sent to the town of Newburgh by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. The Crossroads Hotel in Newburgh is just one of several hotels reportedly booting homeless veterans to accommodate incoming migrants. It's reported these hotels make close to $190 a night housing migrants, compared to just night housing vets. It wasn't just military veterans kicked out of their hotel rooms, but several wedding parties are reportedly scrambling to find new venues or canceling their wedding altogether after these same hotels chose to house migrants last minute rather than keep previously scheduled wedding party guest reservations.
So for the sake of profits, for the sake of money, these hotels are booting out Americans, men and women who served their country and just happen to have fallen on hard times, for the sake of taking care of people who've come into our country illegally. And if you booked a reception at a hotel for your wedding, a year ago, and the hotel cancels your reservation in order to take care of illegal immigrants, what are you going to do? When they tell you that our border is secured, these people are lying to you. They're just bold-faced liars. Not only are they not trying to secure the border, they're actively facilitating the illegal crossing of these people. And it's not just poor people, by the way. We've heard stories of wealthy people who don't want to bother anymore with the legal immigration. I mean, let's face it. If you're trying to get into America legally, and you're on the wait list for years because you want to come in the proper way, you are a chump. And a lot of these foreigners are figuring it out. We're seeing more and more Chinese who apparently have lots of dough paying $20,000, $30,000 to make it in. So when they show up, I've seen pictures and videos of really well-dressed Chinese people. I mean, they're groomed, they're beautiful, and they're standing in line amongst the mass of humanity, of poverty. But they're standing there, they're well-dressed, and they don't have any luggage, all right? The women just have a purse, but apparently they don't have the need to carry around, garbage bags full of their belongings. They'll buy what they need when they get to New York. But they're saying to themselves, listen, why should I wait years in order to come into America legally when I can just go to Mexico, cross the border illegally, and look, they're not going to boot me out. All they have to do is wait long enough, and they're going to have some kind of amnesty program down the road, and I'm in. So all of you people out there in the Philippines, wherever you are, and you're trying to come in America legally, and you're waiting years, don't bother. Just show up in Mexico and cross the border. This is the message that our own government is sending. Once you make it onto our soil, you're golden. The cost to our local government is be damned. I mean, they have busloads of people that they're sending to cities all across America, and they're not just the big cities. They're not just New York, Chicago, LA. Okay, they're sending them to every little town across America is going to be affected by this. And again, veterans, this really, really ticks me off. If this doesn't piss you off, I don't know what will. They're kicking men and women who served this country and just happen to fall on hard times out of a hotel to make room for people who don't even speak our language. They've got diseases. They came in illegally. They have no respect for our laws. And listen, I'm as compassionate as the next person, but we cannot afford to take in every person in the world who has fallen on hard times. We just don't have the resources. Even if we had the money, we just don't have the infrastructure. These people come in, they don't speak the language. So right away, they're at a disadvantage. And with the laws we have in place, they're not allowed to work legally, which means they're on welfare. They're on public assistance. And that takes away from the public assistance that's available to our own citizens. And this is happening not just in America, by the way, but all of your first world countries in Europe. It's happening to you guys too. But because of this massive humanity that has already gotten here, and they continue to come in, and we're not going to kick the lives are never going to be the same. The values of our country have changed. And listen, up until now, we've been a democratic society, which means, we've elected these people. Well, I didn't, but a lot of you guys did. You elected, you knew they're leftist leaning. You knew their policies. Sanctuary City, great idea. We should be compassionate and let everyone in who wants to come in. Good idea. You're a junkie? Well, rather than helping you get clean, we'll give you more needles. And by the way, when you're done with the needles, don't worry about it. You can just toss it on the ground. Well, what harm could it do? You believe in the idea of a nuclear family? A mother and a father actually married with children, with lots of children? Boy, you are a nut job, because that's not the way you're supposed to be these days. As a matter of fact, if your little boy plays with a Barbie doll on some odd occasion, he might be a girl. We are in bizarro world right now. Bizarro world. But it's not funny. The values that made America great are these days deemed to be irrelevant, outdated, old-fashioned, and immoral. Now, I know I usually talk about financial stuff, right? Well, this is financially related. This is one piece of the puzzle in the globalist agenda, in their one world fantasy land. And part of that includes, the US dollar. We got to destroy the US dollar, man. We can't have it be dominant anymore. So how do we destroy the US dollar? We'll just print. And oh, by the way, if all they can do is print money, and by the way, they don't actually print them anymore. All they have to do this is digital. They just go on a computer and then digitally create the money, right? So we can send, Ukraine a blank check for whatever they want. $100 billion? Sure, no problem. Meanwhile, we cannot take care of our own veterans. We have 3 million brand new illegal immigrants who now need health care and housing. But if you live on the south side of Chicago and you have a hard time making ends meet, yeah, you know what? We might not be able to get around to you for a while. And you're a big bank who made stupid decisions? Don't worry. We got you covered. Here's $30 billion. Who's going to pay for it? We'll figure that out later on. $31.5 trillion in national debt? Don't worry about it. Our kids will take care of it eventually. So the debasing of our economy, the debasing of our currency, the debasing of our society, it's all part of a grand plan. And you got to hand it to them. These guys have pulled it off. Our lives will never be the same. If you're a freedom-loving, sovereign human being and you enjoy your personal freedoms, we are losing our freedoms every single day. And it's not happening bit by bit anymore. It's happening in chunks. Just wait for that CBDC to come. Just wait for that national digital ID that's coming. We're going to be living in a Soviet-style Stasi police state where they will be asking us for your papers. Show me your papers. And if you don't have your digital ID that has every little aspect of your life on it, you're probably going to be thrown in some kind of a jail somewhere. They're making us slaves. And you have to start doing whatever you can to start securing your own personal sovereignty. So a few things you can do, okay? Reduce your exposure to your bank, put some of your money into gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. That's a good start. Okay, so I know I went off the beaten path a little bit today. And I hope you'll forgive me for that. I just, today was a therapy session for me. And please, if you don't mind, in the comment section below, I really would like to hear your opinion, your thoughts about what I just said. Am I being unreasonable? Am I being too hard?
No, you're not being unreasonable, and no, you're not being too harsh. As you were doing that, I got a couple of links and some supporting documents that people can see So I think the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, when somebody has their opinion like that, what you need to do is to make sure, first of all, that they're not a mouthpiece of the deep state, hearing news from somewhere that really outrages them and forces them to go out into social media to get it off their chest. And I can tell you, folks, that Ed's not a mouthpiece of the deep state, because I'll show you exactly what he's talking about and I'll verify it for you in less than like 3 clicks of my mouse. And from there as well, what you've got to do is you've got to look at what you can do to protect yourself. So yesterday, Ed, we talked about Whitney Webb on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, Valuetainment, and she said the way to protect yourself from that is to maintain your personal sovereignty. So it's what you said: reduce your exposure to the banks, get some gold and silver, and create some passive income, and stop looking to one person to solve all of those problems. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump's in power. It doesn't matter if Ron DeSantis is in power or Joe Biden's in power. They're all the same side they're both sides of the same coin, is the way you would kind of describe that. And it's all just a big giant cartel. The whole thing is a cartel. No government is going to save you from yourself there. Tell me, Ed, did you have to write anything there, or did you just kind of speak?
No,
it seemed like the most natural thing in the world for you.
No, I just spoke. I edited some of the look. This is like a 45-minute rant. So when you saw that, so I edited that. But no, that's all me. That's but look, I do spend a lot of time covering these topics. So every one of the little topics that I just touched on briefly, I've done deep dives into every one of those topics individually. So I'm not just making this stuff up, guys. It's not just a feeling that I have that things are going wrong. I've looked at all these issues, and my concern is that too many people out there are too busy living their lives. They go to work and they're not really paying attention. And one day this summer, they're going to wake up to find their application for their own little CBDC card, and they're going to say, "What the hell is a CBDC card?"
Well, we have that digital ID here in Australia. If you own a proprietary limited company or your equivalent of an LLC, you must have the digital ID, and then all of the government systems and processes are now deployed into your MyGov app. So that's your tax records, that's your medical records, that's everything to do with you, your passport, all of that stuff is in one place. Yeah. We already have digital IDs and the sophistication rolled out here in Australia.
Yeah, so you guys have had your rude awakening. Ours is coming up. Ours in America, it's coming up soon. Most people are still unaware of this stuff. And
I have no idea that that's coming.
They have no idea what's coming down the road. It's going to be, that's why, you and I are trying our best to alert people about what's coming up and the consequences of what they are. Encourage people to start taking steps to do whatever you can to look. I don't think it's going to be possible to avoid these issues completely. It's probably going to be unavoidable. When the only form of currency is the CBDC, it's going to be hard to live your life without having to, it's going to be kind of unavoidable.
You'll have to comply. You've got no choice if you want to eat and continue to drive a car and go to work. You have to comply. There's no choice.
Right. But you can minimize it. You can't accept to minimize it. And that's what, so that's why I keep saying, do the best you can to attain a modicum. That's why I chose that word, modicum, because I don't think it's going to be extremely difficult for you to be completely free anymore. The only way to be free is to move into the backwoods and build a still and learn how to
live off jungle juice.
Yeah, that's it. That's about it. And hope that no government census guy shows up in the woods to find it.
To make sure you've got your CBDCs.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen. I'll just pop you out of the stream there. Let me share my screen, and I'm going to show people some supporting documents that marry up to what we're talking about. So I want you folks to head over to Twitter, and I want you to follow Michael Yon, and I'll put the link. So it's just Michael_Yon for his Twitter. I'll put the link to it down below in the show notes after I finish this. I can't amend the show notes as we're doing it. But here is what you were talking about, Ed. You would have seen, you probably saw the redacted report yesterday with Clayton and Natalie Morris, and this guy was on that show. I'll put the link to that as well. So Michael Yon is he's been a war correspondent for the last 30 years, and he spent a whole bunch of time down at the border, and he's recorded this. So this is the, not to pick on the Chinese, but this is you can see the video just playing here down below. You can tell these folks are from South America, but watch this Chinese family here in the middle.
Look at that. Class acts, right? It's classy. And
look at her she's wearing a nice jacket, nice pair of pants, got a handbag. Nobody's got a backpack. And look at this guy looking him up and down.
Yeah.
Look at this dude.
Yeah.
Get to the back of the queue. There's their mates. You know,
and
he's got a Gore-Tex jacket there.
That woman in pink does not want to touch anybody.
Yeah, she's like, what do you want me to do? And so in that interview yesterday, Michael Yon says that these people don't have to pay to walk across South America. And this is the path. This is what I was looking for. This is the migration path that people take. They come this way like this to there. But anybody in the world can fly to Ecuador and catch a bus to this place in Colombia. From there, take a motorboat to this place in Colombia. Then they begin the extremely difficult and dangerous trek through the Darien Gap to where they can catch a bus to Costa Rica. So the Darien Gap is this place here where he's talking about here. And this is scrub. It's jungle. It's 3 canopy jungle. And yesterday on the redacted report, Michael was talking about how there's nowhere really for people to sleep in the jungle as they're making their trek across there. So they sleep near the rivers. But you have a lot of flash flooding in a jungle, and flash flooding happened, and look, 160 people have died over the last few days. And the other people that are coming through are just stepping over these bodies as they go through. So I really encourage you to have a look at Michael's Twitter account. And if you look at this post here, so I'm showing you this map here, and you'll be able to scroll in his feed for a couple of mouse wheels. But if you look here, it says Biden/Democrat pre-rape kits. Let me just say that again. Pre-rape kits are handed out to women and children in Colombia before entering the Darien Gap into Panama. US taxpayer-funded rape and killed by man, beast, mountains, mud, flash floods. About 160 have died over the last few days. And that's from May 17, and today is May 20, or May 19 there in the United States. This is like from 2 days ago. And this is the kit, pre-rape kit, handed over to women, children, aliens by US taxpayer money for safer rape in the jungles and deserts. Please share if you care to stop the rapes. So this is what they get.
Yeah, like, I mean, they're telling the girls, be expected to be raped.
Are you serious, man? Like, it's unbelievable. Make sure, folks, you go and have a look in the show notes after the show is finished, and have a look at or just head over to the Redacted channel right now. I should find the link for that, and I'll put it on the screen. But head over to Redacted and watch the interview with Michael, because he shows this to you, and just hearing his explanation is amazing. But if you just scroll to the top of his Twitter, he shows you what's going on. Look, you know, American Animal Farm. Look, the cartel shining lasers at him here. Over here, yesterday on that interview, he was talking about these prepaid Visa debit cards that are handed out to these immigrants that are coming across the border. So if you think that this is not an organized event, who has hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of dollars of these cards to hand out to these people as they're coming in to the United States illegally? And if you look at the wall and what they're doing there, just walking straight through, it's just, if you just scroll through here, this is like unbelievable. This is how the treason invasion of America is being run by our traitor government secretly at night under the cover of darkness. That's what's going on. And he shows yesterday in his report, the buses turn up. So here where my mouse is, you know, waiting invasion Tuba C buses. So keep an eye out for the new white Bluebird DHS invasion buses. So these buses are turning up, but the exact number of people are waiting to get on the bus. So they're lining them up with the right number of people to get on the bus to ship them into the United States to actually make that happen. The unspoken truth behind it is this is the people. Yeah, I want a better life for these people, whoever they are. I want them to escape socialism. I want life to be better for them. And I don't actually blame them for actually trying to come across the border to do something like that. And it is really, really terrible that it can't be maintained. I want to show you a little video that is from a couple of years ago from the Prime Minister, maybe the greatest Prime Minister Australia has ever had, arguably. He's pretty annoying, but he was a good manager of the economy and he did pretty well. This is him going for re-election back in the day in, where is it, in 2001. So just have a listen to what he says about the difference between the Australian policy and the American policy. And this policy is still in place today, or it was under the Liberal government, but believe it or not, the person that took over the immigration portfolio after the Liberal government was ousted, I think it was in 2007 by the Labor Party, was the immigration minister. Drum roll, where's the drum roll sound? The immigration minister was Chris Bowen. And under Chris Bowen being the immigration minister, he was the most incompetent immigration minister in Australian history. In fact, he's been the most incompetent minister in Australian history in every government portfolio he's ever been part of, or any shadow ministry he's ever been part of. And more than 2,000 people died with boats coming to Australia under his watch. He's responsible for the deaths of 2,000 immigrants. But this is a policy that Australia had, and this is how John Howard won the election, because he was losing in the polls. But listen to what he says.
No sound there, Robbie.
Oh, damn, no sound. Oh, that's a shame. Not sure what's happening there if there's no sound. So it's a famous speech that John Howard says about, we will decide who comes to this country. So he says in the preamble, in the leading up to that, he says that we're a generous country. We take the second largest number of immigrants in the world, only second to Canada, but we will decide who will come to this country. Not the people traffickers, not the people trying to make money off other people's misery. We will decide who will come to this country. And he won the election in a landslide. And as soon as he came to power, he implemented all of those policies and it all went away. And as soon as the Labor Party came to power in 2007, they relaxed all of the policies, and it led to the death of more than 2,000 people at sea that we know of. It was actually probably a whole lot more than that, but it was a very, very serious problem. In Australia, we have that immigration problem, and we have now with the new Australian government, once again with the Labor Party. Unfortunately, Chris Bowen is part of that, but this time in the environment portfolio, we have a policy where they're going to bring in 1.5 million people in the next 5 years, but they're doing that under the guise of, they'll be professionals, they'll help us grow our economy, but where are we going to house those people? There's only 1.5 million people that live in the city of Adelaide, for heaven's sake. And Adelaide's a busy place. If you go down there, it's a pumping place. Where are we going to put all these people? Like you, Ed, we don't have the infrastructure to handle these influxes. And I just want to show this US Customs and Border Protection report just to show you that Ed's not a mouthpiece of the deep state. So this is from March this year, just a month or so ago. And if you look down into the report, it says, the disturbing thing here, unaccompanied children. Encounters of unaccompanied children increased 14%, with 12,374 encounters in March compared with 10,000 in February. It's like, imagine sending your little kid across the border. Encounters of family unit individuals increased by 38%, from 33,000 to 45,000, which is a 47% decrease from 86,000. Oh my God, unbelievable, these numbers. 87,000 encounters, 46% of the total were processed for expulsion under Title 42. 104,000 encounters were processed under Title 8. Just the numbers are staggering. And I'll put this link in the description, although you won't have to go very far to find it. What I typed in was weaponizing the US border 2023, and it comes up with this as the first result, which is the ultimate irony. So this is the unspoken truth right here of the Biden government policies. This is what's actually happened. And, the most alarming thing for me is this: the kids there by themselves, and then when you see the unspoken truth of what's really going on, and these people, they look like normal, reasonable people. I'm sure they're fine. But the result of that is the complete destruction of your society. And to your point, Ed, I think that the globalists, they have won, man. It's unequivocal. They've won.
Yeah.
Because there's no going back.
No, it's impossible. I mean, what are we going to do? Are we going to kick them out? We're not going to kick them out. Listen.
And even if you implemented a policy to do that, how would you do it? It'd take you 20 years to find them all.
Well, yeah,
threaten them all.
And they'd go kicking and screaming the entire way, and then all the defenders out there, all the bleeding heart liberals would be. There's no way it would happen. Listen, I want to make 2 quick points here. First one is this Mayorkas guy. Okay, one of the most evil people in the world. He has been going down to the Darien Gap on a regular basis to make sure everything's all organized well, and they're bragging right now. Look, all these routes, they're organized, man. They've got it down, and the government, our government, is facilitating a lot, sending buses. We're making it easy for them to happen. And his big bragging point these days is how the influx is, how organized it is, and it's not chaotic anymore. Well, yeah, it's not chaotic because you're organizing it.
Stop organizing it.
You stop organizing it. So they're bragging about how organized the illegal immigration is.
Imagine being a customs man or woman or a cop or a military person on the board and just watching that. When you know that, hey, these people are coming here illegally, but I'm just like, come on, let's go. It's like crazy, man.
And to answer your point about how you kind of don't blame for, listen, everyone wants to about that. I don't begrudge somebody who wanting to provide for his family.
Absolutely not, no.
I can. However, okay, in every
nobody
single
likes
one,
a queue jumper.
Yeah. However, every single one of these countries in Central and South America, they're fucking socialist countries that were voted into office, and they've been giving you nothing but misery for decades. But
they're bringing that here. That's what they're doing.
Well, but you keep electing socialists. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result?
No, it's electing another socialist.
Yeah, they're electing another socialist.
That's the new definition. Don't worry about Einstein's.
I mean, come on, guys. Where's your big duh moment? Duh. When are you guys going to wake up? And it's true for the people in California too. California, the socialists destroyed that state. And it's gotten so bad that even a lot of the liberals are leaving the damn state. And where are they going?
Saying something.
Yeah, and where are they going? They're going to Texas and Florida. They're the same states, and they're bringing their liberal policies with them. These people don't learn, and so California is changing the nature of what's left of our traditional conservative states right now. They're getting into office, and they're going to do the same thing to Texas and Florida that they did to California. And the New Yorkers are going down to Florida, and they're gonna change that. And then we have the globalists fleeing the socialist countries, bringing their socialism with them. I mean, I'm sure that they probably have parties every Friday after work at the UN. They tell everyone, turn off the cameras, and they go and they pop those champagne corks and they're celebrating. This is So thanks for letting me get.
Are you good?
Thanks for letting me get off the chest. But I would like to know in the comment section below. Can you all let me know what you think about this? Am I completely off base here? Am I completely, just please? I'd like to hear. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear. I would love to hear.
We went through this in Australia in 2001, 2002 when that John Howard thing actually happened. I'll find the link to that and I'll post it as well. So. Make sure you have a look at the comments there. But essentially what happened on the other side of that, the people that were for open borders and more immigration, legal or not legal, were vilifying and demonizing everybody that voted for John Howard and saying that you're a racist. And it was massively divisive. And the Howard government actually said, all right, if you come here illegally on one of those boats or you overstay your visa, what we're going to do is we're going to put you in what we're going to call immigration detention. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to have you on shore here in Australia. We're going to ship you off to a place in northwestern Australia called Christmas Island.
I love that.
Other really awful place called Nauru. And they spent hundreds of millions of dollars actually shipping people off to those places. And people languished in immigration detention in Papua New Guinea, Nauru, Christmas Island, literally for years. And the ABC here in Australia, which is the government-funded mainstream news outlet, they get more than $1 billion in government funding every year. They created a TV show called Go Back to Where You Came From. And it actually, so it's these lefties
was it
saying...
popular?
It's actually really good.
Okay.
Really, really good. So it's these lefties going, hey, these are people. Don't forget that they're people. And it kind of brings you back down to earth, right? And you have to like look at it. And what they do is they take a bunch of people like me and you who are on the conservative side and are like, they shouldn't come here illegally. And they take them back to these places like in Iraq. They couldn't go to Iran, of course, but they go back to these places in Africa and these horrendous places. And you see, you look at it and you go, yeah, man, if I was there, I would probably be the same as you and do anything that I possibly could to get the hell out of there. And you understand. But to your point, they're socialist countries and they're countries that have been destroyed by the fabric of their government. It's got nothing to do with those individuals, those people. It's just circumstance that they happen to actually be there. But it's another example of the globalists actually winning.
If your government is providing nothing but misery, get rid of the freaking government.
It's really not much harder than that, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you do have, even though you're socialists, they aren't dictatorships. They do have elections.
Yeah.
So what the bloody hell?
What's going on? You know, it also highlights to me, let's close out this segment here, Ed, with your final thoughts, is that you started off by saying the globalists have won, and the people that are the globalists are not just in the United Nations or in the EU or some other WEF thing that you hear about in some tinfoil hat conspiracy theory or, spoiler alert thing that's out there. They're in the United States government. And when you look at this one issue, this singular issue, never mind all of this green, fake climate change, fake environment stuff, it's all fake. 100% of that is fake. None of that is real. But when you look at this one issue at the border, which is not fake, it's very, very real, you can see the globalists in your government. It's not real that you've elected these people. The congressmen and the congresswomen and the senators that you've elected and the politicians that are there in the United States have absolutely no say and nothing to do with the policies that you think that you've elected them for. The government that you see, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a totalitarian technocracy and an autocracy in some ways. It's just not real. It's not real. Those people that you voted for, that don't matter. It's irrelevant. That's so right. What are your final thoughts on that?
Yeah, amen. It almost doesn't matter who's in office anymore because the deep state is so ingrained, and the globalists control the deep state. Now, and then we have public globalists like the Joe Bidens of the world that you actually see, and they're not shy and they're not embarrassed about promoting these kind of policies. And what I'm tempted to say the best I can do for you, Rob, is a nuclear war, but I want
because this crisis in finance, this crisis in immigration, and the fake crisis that they're creating, the self-inflicted wound of fake climate change, is that's all going to come to a head. And the way that I'm going to maintain power is by going to war over here. And so look over here while we destroy the economy over here. And as you say, take you down a notch. So how many notches down are you going to go?
Hey, as far as they can get away with, and they're getting away with a lot. I'll just leave people with one final message, and that is, listen, don't rely on the government to help you. They're not there to help you. Ronald Reagan said the most evil words you can hear from the government are, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. Those are
even Ronnie Reagan said that, man.
That's right. So don't rely on the government because they're not there to help you. The only person you can rely on is yourself. So start taking measures to secure your personal sovereignty and tune into the show as much as you can, because we're going to give you some ideas on that topic along the way. So if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and share this video if you don't mind. Let's get the word out. Hit that share button and say, hey, you got to watch these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you with some F-16 training for Ukrainian pilots. Why does this matter, folks? Why do these F-16s matter? So if you don't know anything about aviation, these are some Polish F-16s. And here's some F-16s in Korea. the American Air Force has got some air power. That's more than the entire Australian Air Force in one photo right there, which is pretty insane. Why does any of this matter? Why do F-16s matter? Why does the US being part of this matter? When you look at the conflict in Ukraine, I look at it and think maybe they've just given them enough weapons just to kind of hold them off, hold them at bay. And part of the reason that this is taking such a long time is because we know that we could destroy the Russians and the Russians on the ground in the first week if we got involved with it. And even if we trained, they want 4 squadrons of them. They want 40 jets, right? That's what they said that they've needed, which is an entire Air Force of fighter jets that are going to be handed to them. It's like, what happens on the other side of all of this? So let me just take a second to go through some capability of F-16 and Viper and why that's so important. It is the most prolific Western fighter that's ever existed. There's more than 4,500 of them. First flight of the thing was in 1978. So it's only a year younger than me. And they have different blocks, so different variants of them. And we haven't heard what block variant that they get of them, which kind of is pretty telling. And it will tell us if they're getting really old inventory from the 1980s or they're getting really state-of-the-art equipment. So the different variants in the blocks have got to do with the radar systems and the weapon systems that they can actually carry. So don't be misled when they say that they're getting F-16s, that they're getting Block 60, Block 70 versions of them, the latest and greatest versions. They're not getting those at all. They're going to be getting some really old stuff, I predict, that has limited capability and to only just do enough to hold the Russians at bay. So the Russian Air Force will still outrange us with their beyond visual range missile systems, and they've always been able to do that. So I highly doubt that they're getting AIM 260 or Meteor missiles put onto these jets to be able to engage with the Russian Air Force at range, beyond visual range that is. So really what we've got here is a fighter ground attack scenario that we're looking at. And is that a good thing? Yes, it's an enhanced capability, and it gives us not a long-range strike capability because the range of a Viper is pretty limited, particularly without the air-to-air refueling capability. But the thing that I want to highlight here, and here's the unspoken truth, folks, is that for every hour that a Viper flies, it requires 17 hours of maintenance. So if we're talking about 40 jets, and say each jet flies 2 hours per day, just think about the logistics that go behind that. So 17 times 2 is 34 times 40, and not every jet's flying every day. Say that you have 20 jets flying per day. That's a lot of hours in maintenance. And imagine how many people it takes to actually make that happen. How many crew chiefs does it take? How many guys turning wrenches and spanners does it take to maintain just 1 hour of that? And to actually build the capability to understand the avionics, the systems, the structure of the aircraft. There's just like literally thousands of things that you have to learn. You've got to go to school for 3 years to learn to be a mechanic on one of those things. And then when you go there for 3 years to be the mechanic, then you really don't have the capability to do very much beyond actually working directly with the people that have been there for years. Like the level of experience you need to work on something like this. If you're a car mechanic, it's no different, right? You've got to do an apprenticeship for 4 years and you've got to go and study, probably once a week, and you've got to go through exams. And then even though you know how to do everything that you've learned in your apprenticeship, if you go to a new car dealership to go and be a mechanic and a technician at one of those places, you're starting again because I don't know anything about these vehicles. I'm going right back to the start. So the level of logistics that are behind it. So I'll say it again. For every 1 hour of flight, there's 17 hours of maintenance on the lower end to actually maintain these jets. And if you start talking about delivering jets to them that are from the 1980s and the 1990s, you're probably talking 20 to 30 hours per hour for every hour that the jet flies. So that's just one aspect of it. So they're talking about training pilots, but where are the aircraft going to be housed? In Ukraine, or are they going to live in Poland and some of the Baltic states? Air-to-air refuel on the way in, fence in across the border, and then fence in across the border in Ukraine and then go strike their targets? Or are they going to operate out of air bases in Ukraine? No one's talking about the details here. And if they start operating on the other side of the border in Poland, oh, it's the Ukrainian Air Force. We're operating from there. Well, the Russian Air Force operates from Belarus. Well, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Well, you're operating from a NATO airbase. So now NATO maintenance personnel are supporting the Ukrainian pilots. Well, is that NATO being involved in this conflict? And is that going to escalate the conflict? So these are the things that nobody is asking. No one's asking these questions. For some reason, they don't understand that it takes 17 to 30 hours to maintain 1 hour of flying time. So now we talk about maintenance of it. So let me show you why the military-industrial complex is chomping at the bit to give them jets. So for every hour that a Viper flies, it's estimated to cost about $26,000 per hour. So who's paying for that? You are. America, you are. That's who's paying for it. It's an incredible amount of money per hour. So imagine these jets fly 30 hours per month each, and then you start saying that there's 40 jets that have an operational tempo of 20 to 30 hours each per month, and you're about 30 grand per hour to operate it, and then you're 17 to 30 hours per hour flying time in maintenance. How on earth are they going to manage that? You can't build an air force in a couple of weeks. That capability takes decades and decades to build that capability. Not to mention the fact that the Ukrainians have been operating Soviet aircraft for the entire existence. They don't operate Western aircraft. They just don't have them. And there was a couple of Ukrainian pilots. So there was an Su-27 pilot, so fighter pilot, and a MiG-29 pilot, again, fighter pilot, sent to the United States to do assessments for 2 weeks for training in Ukraine on Viper. And there was really 5 things that came out of it. So they said that they could create an abridged training syllabus for Ukrainian pilots. And instead of learning 250 tasks, they could lower that to 160 tasks. So one of the biggest concerns that they had, though, was these Ukrainian fellows couldn't actually speak English. So English is the universal language of aviation, and they're operating aircraft made in the United States. So they're going from the Russian system to the English system. So that's actually a really big factor for them as well. So considerations of previous experience was a big thing. They were able to handle the aircraft pretty well because it translated what they were doing. So I'm certain, I couldn't find any information whether or not they actually went flying for real. What I could see was all of it was conducted in a simulator. So the simulators are real to life and full fidelity as well. So it's really not much different to actually going flying. And because they're fighter pilots already, you know, there's not much of a transition there as well. So the recommendation is to actually cut the total time of training down to about 4 months for these people. And when I look at that, something that would normally, the pipeline is normally 18 months to 2 years, and they're going to slice it down to 4 months. Are you kidding me? Really? Are you kidding me? So now put that aside. How can you possibly learn those skills and hone those skills? You know, a MiG-29 pilot or an Su-27 pilot can get in the aircraft and take off and land. I'm sure they can, because you push the throttle forward, the aircraft goes faster. You pull it back, it goes higher. Turn left, it turns left. Pull the throttle back, it'll go lower. That's it. All airplanes operate the same. All helicopters operate the same. But just because you can take off and land and you have the airmanship and the skills to actually do that, the ability to actually fight the aircraft is something that can't be trained in 4 months. You can't learn that in 4 months. It's not possible to learn something like that. And think about when you were learning to drive. We were talking about my daughter learning to drive before we hit the record button here. You can't learn to drive in 4 months. It's just not possible. You can't go from a standing start. Even if you drive every single day, you're still not competent and you're still risky, and you'll get in the car with somebody who's got experience and I'll be like, oh my God. So the capability that the Vipers give to them is unlike anything else that's out there. It's the right pick. There's no doubt about that. And my knowledge and what I know about military and hardware, particularly Air Force, it's the right pick for sure. It's the right machine. But what block is it? So what version is it? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, where are they going to be housed? And if they're housed, imagine if they're housed in Ukraine and the Russians go after them and they fire 30 cruise missiles at them and you bleed your air defenses dry in that airstrike and it gets through and 9 of those jets are destroyed. Like what? We hit we hit the Russian Air Force in Crimea with a drone and destroyed a series of their aircraft that were parked in the open. Ukrainians don't have hardened shelters to park F-16s in. The best that they can do is park them in the open with a revetment around them, so if one of them gets clipped, it doesn't blow up and blow up the one next to it. So there's so many things here that don't make sense. And my view is that this is an escalation beyond what you might see. But we might not even see any of this happen. Tell me what you think here, Ed, because this is the last, I'm shooting craps, man. It's the last throw of the dice here with this counterattack this summer. And if it doesn't come to pass, I predict the support for the Ukrainians might go away. And then they're going to say, look, you know, this is a moot point. You're going to have to negotiate. Bad luck. And we're just not going to support you anymore, give you any more money. Bad luck. And all of the pilot training and all of the logistics and everything that's going on with their make it up as you go Air Force will go away as well. And by the time that's all ready to go, if you've got a 4 or 5 month pipeline of training, so the British have come out with the Dutch and a couple of other countries and said, we'll form a coalition to train them. The Americans, Joe Biden today in Japan at the G7 said, yep, we're going to lead the flying training for the F-16s. So there's a coalition of people coming together, but the Americans are not going to give them the jets. The jets are going to come from the Europeans, but the Americans are going to lead the training, so to NATO standards. That's you're 5 or 6 months down the track before any fighter jet is seen in Ukraine. So 5 or 6 months down the track, counter-assault has finished. Were we successful? If we're not successful, all of that goes away. And if we are successful and those jets come, we're escalating this thing to the very next level. Like, really? This is, really?
Well, Ukraine already has a PR problem because in Europe, protests are breaking out at an accelerated rate against this war.
Yeah, people have had enough of it, hey?
You're right. People have had enough. And they've had enough of Zelensky, and they've had enough of this war. They've had enough of how this is affecting their lives. You know, the cost of everything is going up. It does, on a practical level, it's affecting the Europeans' lives. So they've got a PR problem. So it feels to me like they're trying to get as much as they can while they can. It feels like we better get something out of this as fast as we can. Zelensky is in a panic, going from country to country, going on fashion runways with his newest jumper in each country, trying to raise money for. I'm sure he's desperately trying to raise money while he can, while the governments are willing to pony up. That's what it kind of feels like to me. I remember it was last summer. Do you remember how all the NATO countries from Poland, Czechoslovakia, France, they're turning themselves into pretzels to make sure to avoid the perception that they were aiding Ukraine, right? Like particularly around jets, right?
It's because they're making themselves a target, right? So if these jets operate from Poland, what do you think the Russians are going to do?
That's right.
Operating over there.
Well,
here comes a Kinzhal missile for you. Eat that.
Yeah, right. Well, now who's providing these F-16s? You said the Poland?
No, the Polish said that they wouldn't. Poland gave them all of their MiG-29s because they replaced their MiG-29s with F-16s, and they said, we just don't have enough Vipers to give to you.
Okay, but
we have to hold on to them.
But they are giving them planes.
Okay,
so NATO, apparently, they're stepping up. They seem to be not so shy anymore about overtly providing aid to Ukraine.
But you can't covertly supply these Vipers to them. So I can give you the MiG-29s because you've got supply chains and you've got everything that you need to maintain. So you've got the IP and the knowledge base there to actually look after those jets because that's what you've been operating forever. But now, if you suddenly need parts for that jet, the jet comes from Russia. So where do you get those bits and pieces? Well, they get the bits and pieces from the other operators in Europe. So already NATO are supplying logistics to the Ukrainians back through these Soviet-era aircraft. So now when we introduce Western aircraft into it, all of the logistics, all of the supply, all of the everything will come from there. So is it the only thing that I can think of, the only thing that I can think of is the plane lands in Ukraine, Ukrainian fighter pilot gets out, NATO fighter pilot gets in, flies it across the border to Poland, This is the giant circle jerk
Yeah,
that you go through, and
yeah,
this is the lawyers going, "Oh, we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
We're fixing the Leopard tank in Poland as well."
That's right. And of course, they're going to have ledgers, with timestamps about when
Look,
each
we
pilot got in,
didn't do
who
that.
got in, and they're going to show Russia, see, just so you know, we're doing everything exactly right.
Yeah, eat the Kinzhal missile.
Yeah, that's right. It's I see a lot of blurring of a lot of lines here, and I still think that the worst kept secret in the world right now is that this is actually a war between Ukraine and Russia. It's not. This is a war between America and Russia. This is a proxy war. Ukraine is just a proxy. And to your point earlier on, when you said this could drag things on, I think that's perfectly fine by the powers to be here. We would love America. I think that the powers to be at the Pentagon, they would love to have this drag on for years to bleed Russia, right? To use up their resources. They would love for this to go on, for years. They would like this to be another Afghanistan. They would like this to just bleed Russia. And if it means killing a lot more Ukrainians along the way, so be it.
Yeah, that's the cost of it, right? Is that they're the ones that are paying the price, not anybody else, because they just print the money and send it across there. It's just you're quite correct in saying it's the blurring of lines. Another way to describe it is it's insidious mission creep. Is inside of in the IT world that I've lived in for a long time, you have what we call scope creep. So somebody will go away and create a project and say they want to do A, B, and C, and you go, okay, cool, we lock it in, we scope it in great detail, and then 3 weeks into the project, they go, oh, I've actually, can you add this for me? Or can we do this? And so you have this scope creep going on. And here in Ukraine, we have mission creep. There was absolutely no way in the world we were ever going to supply them with armor. And all of a sudden, there's a coalition that's supplying all of their armor and giving it across. There's no way we were going to supply them fighter jets. And all of a sudden, the fighter jets came out of the woodwork and out of storage, and there you go, there's your jets. Now, what's next? Now we're going to build them a full-on Western Air Force that's, half the size of the Australian Air Force. And we've got a small Air Force, 100 aircraft or something like that. It's very small. And this is happening on the fly, and you're going to build that capability internally? Bullshit. It's all bullshit, man. The unspoken truth is that it's bullshit.
Yeah, no, and amongst all of this, remember, every time a bridge is blown, a road is blown, a building is blown, that's one more project for China to be built.
Yeah, that's it. The Belt and Road is going to build it all back for us.
Yeah,
build back better.
That's better. And I still believe every day I think more and more this is the way it's going to work out. It's going to end with Zelensky at a big oak table across from Vladimir and Xi signing a Brexit agreement.
He's got no choice. He's not going to have a choice.
No, I think that's the way. I think that's the way it's going to end. And the people in the Pentagon, they're going to be they have aneurysms, and they're watching that signing ceremony. And
remember the Putin policy. Yeah, it's not seen as Europe; it's seen as Eurasia, and he believes it's his from Vladivostok all the way to Portugal.
But I think this is what I think. I think that Putin's compromise is going to be okay. You can keep Ukraine, but I just want you to adopt some really friendly Russian policies. Okay. Okay. And so in effect, it's going to be a Russian state. Now, prior to the Maidan revolution, it was a Russian enclave, really.
The borders have been changing every half an hour for the last 500 years, man.
That's right. That's right.
It's ridiculous. Look, and I'm not being some sort of Russia bro saying, yeah, it's good they can invade, they can do whatever they want. But you know what this comes down to at the end of the day? It's just two old men can't speak to each other. That's what it comes down to. Joe Biden, 80-something, years old, however old he is, and then Vladimir Putin in his 70s. Two old men won't get together to find a solution for this because no matter what, they just don't ever want to give an inch. Neither of them want to give an inch. And, people just can't talk to each other. They can't find common ground. They can't find compromise. Human beings have got more in common with each other than we do not in common with each other. It's just such a shame.
Well, to a large degree, most wars through history were basically a failure of diplomacy, right? They weren't, like you said, they weren't able.
That's exactly what this was.
On the other hand, there were plenty of wars throughout history where there was a madman in charge. He wanted what he wanted. He was going to take it. And negotiation be damned. No, I want it all.
Which one is this one? Is it the diplomacy or a madman?
Well, okay. Now, I don't want to make people angry here, but I'm trying to put myself inside that rat's nest of a brain of Putin here, trying to envision what he's thinking. I remember when Russia fell, we sent James Baker over to Russia to assure Gorbachev that we weren't going to go any further. NATO was happy where it was, and we're not going to encroach any more toward Russia.
Here comes the mission creep.
Right. Gorbachev's big concern was, okay, well, you could be right up to our border now, and NATO could be right there. He said, no, we have no interest in bringing NATO into Ukraine, into Georgia, or any of these then bordering countries. And then what happens 8 years later? We have a NATO summit in, I think it says Minsk, if you remember right. And what was on the topic of that NATO meeting?
No expansion.
Is whether or not to bring Georgia into NATO. So Putin saying, Putin started thinking, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, and so if you're Russian and you see your territory, and if you feel an existential threat, you say, I need a buffer. I need to secure that buffer. So I don't know if Putin felt that Ukraine could end up being a NATO country and then bordering his country, he might want to be preemptive. So you know what? Before they get a chance to do it, I'm going to take over Ukraine. And that will be my buffer between NATO and me. But so maybe he would settle on something like, okay, listen, I don't need Ukraine officially, but I'll tell you what, just stand down your army, decimate your army. Maybe he says, get rid of your army. So there's no more standing army. So I know that you're not a threat.
Well, that's actually what he did say.
Oh, okay, there you go. And then in addition to that, he installs a puppet, regime.
His government, his version of that.
Yeah. And said, okay.
And the Ukrainians are never going to have any of that. You can kind of see I can see your rationale. It comes back to that question. Is this war a result of a failure of diplomacy or because there's a crazy person? And Putin doesn't seem like a crazy person. I remember I saw an interview with Emmanuel Macron, and him and Putin were best buddies. They're in this bromance for years and years, and he'd be there all the time and all of this stuff. And I saw Emmanuel Macron saying, it just seems so out of character. I know him really well. I spent a lot of time with him. It seems so out of character because he's actually a really nice guy. And you sort of think, well, anybody is a really nice person. Everybody is a really nice person. But, like to Macron's point, he's just saying that I spent a lot of time with him, so I know who this person is. It's not this political news conference thing that you see all the time and what the media narrative wants you to see of it. He's genuinely saying he's a good dude. I like him. He's my friend. He's my mate. And it seems so out of character that he's done this. So I don't think it's the madman thing. I think it's a complete and total failure of diplomacy. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. Because the Russians get to a point where they're saying, you know what, no matter what we do or say, everybody in the EU is going to lie to us. Nobody is going to play ball with us. Nobody's going to address our concerns. So we're going to have to take our own fate into our own hands, and we're going to invade. Bad luck. Like it or lump it, we're going to invade, and we're going to win at all costs. We've got nuclear weapons. You don't. Get ready. Here we come. And then here we are, 200,000 soldiers dead on the battlefield so far from the Russian side that we know about, if that's even true. I don't know. Am I a mouthpiece of the deep state when I'm saying that? It's really unknown. We won't know how many people have died in this war until the war is over. It's just an absolute travesty. But if that is true...
Well, look, there are some things that we do know. We do know that they've been emptying a lot of prisons in order to fill some conscription quotas, right? So we do know that. You probably would not resort to that if you didn't have to. Yeah. I assume. Another controversial statement I'm going to make about Putin here, and again, God knows I don't love Putin, okay, guys? But listen, Putin has given speeches in the past where I largely agreed with him. Okay.
Joe Biden's never given a speech that I've agreed with.
No,
Never.
no, never. Right, yeah, right. So in that regard, but Putin pointed out in one of his recent speeches, and I know you saw this speech too, Rob, where he's describing, the sanctions that were put on Russia initially. He said, "Thank you. I wish it had happened earlier."
Yeah, finally.
Finally. Because there are reasons, there are economic reasons for that. Now, and he pointed out in several of the speeches that the West is a debt-based system and that we are destroying ourselves. And he is absolutely right about that. The West debt-based monetary system, it's incestuous and it is self-destructive. We cannot keep up what we're doing. It is impossible to keep up what we're doing. We can't do it. So there is going to be a moment. We're going to have a come to Jesus moment here sometime here in the West, and it's not going to be a very fun period. And we've done it to ourselves.
Yeah. And self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted. So I can't argue with him about that. His philosophy on how, if you're born with a beep beep, you're a guy. If you're not, you're a girl. All right. Okay, that I can get on board with. Now the idea of criminalizing, gays, that's I certainly would not agree with that. That's
it's a bridge too far.
I've got gay friends. Some of the best people in the world. So I have no problem with that at all. It's when you start indoctrinating people and trying to convince them of a particular lifestyle. That's what I have issues, with. Anyway, absolutely. So there are little pockets of topics that I'd actually agree with Vladimir on, but big picture.
Yeah, well, look, they're not all that different to us, right? Because they come from a Christian-based society as well. So, you can't demonize them too much, and you can't demonize the entire population because one person has fed up with diplomacy and turned into a madman. I think it's a combination of those two things that have happened. But look, ladies and gentlemen, the unspoken truth is if these jets do get into Ukraine, it's going to be an escalation of this conflict, the likes of we've never seen. In the weeks and months ahead, the escalation that we'll see is not like anything that we've ever seen in human history because modern weapon systems are far more destructive than anything that we've seen before, and we're going to see it at scale this time. It's not some Afghanistan or Iraq thing. This is full conflict, full total war in Europe. So I'm a little bit worried for the future, but that's probably enough unspoken truth for today, Ed.
Do we keep it under an hour?
No, we're at hour 16. There's no chance of that happening. You're just living in a dream world, mate.
Sorry, people. Yeah.
If we can keep it under an hour 30, then we're winning there. So it's all good. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here and you've enjoyed the show, leave us a comment. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and come on over to Spotify and follow us. And don't forget to join us on the Telegram channel where I share a whole lot of that unspoken truth about the conflict in Ukraine as well. So pop on over and say g'day and make sure you connect with us. And we've got something pretty big coming up in the next week or so. I'm looking forward to launching.
Careful.
It's going to be exciting. It's like I'm planting
right.
the seed. I'm excited. Right. It's kind of cool.
All right.
Cool.
It's like keeping a horse back, every time I know he wants to spill the beans. Careful, but it is going to be good. So I hope you guys stay tuned.
Absolutely. Ed, have you got any closing remarks before I end the show for us here?
Just please, everyone else, please leave a comment. We love hearing from people. That's all.
We do definitely love hearing from people. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're out for the week. We'll see you in a couple of days' time. Have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us. Bye for now.